And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage born free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting from an undisclosed location here in the heart of the East Bay, Warren, Rhode Island. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. And of course, the mothership at coalitionradio.us. Joining me live is a friend, full disclosure, a sponsor of this show, someone that I've been politically active with for a number of years. Of course, I'm talking about Daryl Gould. Daryl Gould comes to us, as he has recently on the Coalition, from a different perspective, as an educational activist, someone that he's been involved in long before I knew him as the politician, the candidate, even as my friend. I'd admired from afar his political activism even before the Healy campaign. So as he kind of gets himself ready for this little thing, we first of all want to thank you for your patience. The logistics of putting on something like this are, when you're on the road, can be a little challenging. But we're here. And so, Daryl, welcome to the Coalition.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, so let's talk. You've been on the show a couple times, and you've talked about the role education has in your life, the priority that it takes. You've got 3 children in the Bristol Warren School District.
Correct.
So for you, this is not just an extension of your political activism. This is personal. You've invested a lifetime now, seemingly, in this community. You have a local business. You've run for office. You've been a volunteer. You've been an activist. So how difficult is it on a night like tonight to have to dive into really what seems like, as an outsider, kind of a mess?
Well, it's one of those things, unfortunately, that these are problems that have existed for a long time, Pat. And people who are active in education, and a lot of that ends up being by necessity. It's parents advocating for their kids because you come across a situation where seemingly there's no resource for you or no help. So this is just a product of a mounting pile of frustration with an administration that is clearly failing us, failing our district, our students, our teachers, and the taxpayers in Bristol and Warren. There's problems ranging from the lowest level all the way up to the school committee. So my goal with this broadcast, and it seems like we may be doing more in the future, just because there's a huge amount of material to cover. So tonight is really to focus on a couple of things. It's kind of like the goal really is to inform and educate other parents in the district. I think a lot of people view school as this by necessity. It's a wonderful place called elsewhere. We send our kids where someone else will watch them so we can go to school, go to class, or do whatever we do with our daily lives. So we put a lot of trust in our district, in our teachers and our administration to do the right thing by our kids and by us. And this is come to the point where it's almost gross negligence in our district. So again, my goal is really to bring some, there's a saying, the sunlight is the best disinfectant. So my goal is really to bring some attention to this, and hopes that people get more involved, or at least they know what's going on. I think when people hear some of these stories, I think there's going to be certainly a groundswell of people who all of a sudden realize how bad things are, and that we can't rely on other people to fix this. We need to roll up our sleeves. We need to pay attention. We need to follow these things and become as active as possible. I know we all lead busy lives, and it's very difficult for us to do, but this is important. And I think we're at a point now where, my children, my daughter is entering 8th grade KMS. My twin boys are entering 6th grade at KMS. I'm hoping I can fix this before my kids leave the district. And I can't afford private schools, so when I say leave the district, that means graduate. So at the very least, maybe we can fix this for kids that are a little bit younger than my own. But obviously we want to try and, we're in triage mode right now. We need to fix things. So I guess the main topic really is kind of the state of the state.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning, because if you have a child in the district, then you've been aware of a lot of, I'll call it, inconsistencies. And when I say inconsistencies, there's the portrayed image of the school system, and then there's the reality. And in so many cases, parents, particularly these days, both husband, wife, partner, everyone's working, sometimes more than one job. The tax burden in the East Bay continues to increase. The tax burden in the state continues to increase. So there's a tendency to almost be a little siloed. You're worried about getting through the day. You get your children to school. You always want to believe that the decisions you've made are the right ones, that you've done the right thing by your children. And certainly this area, and I'm not from here originally, and I've only gotten to know it through folks that I've met through the movement, is a beautiful. I'm well traveled. It's one of the prettiest, the nicest, one of the nicest communities that I've seen in the country. And that's not hyperbole. This is a wonderful place to live. So you've done the right thing. You managed to locate in a community with a great reputation, a lot of, a real sense of family here in town. And your children start to run into issues. Some of them, learning. We've grown as a country. We understand now that people learn differently. And there's no right or wrong to that. They just simply learn differently. So you tend to silo yourself because these must be issues I'm facing. And you don't have as much community as you used to in interfacing with other people. And we all know, it's a subject for another night, that the educational system in this country is not looking to always do the right thing for the kids because of financial considerations. Right. So we wake up one day, and as an outsider, the first thing I know about the problem, other than having conversations with you, is this teacher walkout. And everyone's saying, wait a minute, this is in this bucolic community with a middle school. People are talking about exigent dangers. Wait a minute, a middle school in Warren, Rhode Island? It's the antithesis of everything that we think. So was there problems beforehand?
Yeah, there have been problems, and ultimately, and I'll hopefully kind of paint this picture for Pat and the people following, who's ultimately responsible and culpable for the situation that we're in. Mm-hmm. So you're correct. So earlier in the spring, late winter, early spring, we did have a teacher sick out. So it was they picked a Friday, and that was their protest against basically the unsafe conditions at Kickapoo Middle School. It was something that, as someone who's been active as an advocate for people in the district, and my background, as you know, Pat, before I got involved politically and was a candidate as a state rep, my background was education. My kids got bullied, or there were instances that, like you said, there were some inconsistencies with the application of policy. I felt like things weren't handled properly. I don't necessarily agree with all the policies our district has, but I do expect them to follow the policies that they put in place. And that seems to be something that's egregious in this district. So there have been, for the past probably 5 or 6 years, a group of us, and that group changes. People come and go as they experience problems and solve their problems. They come and go out of this, kind of group that we have that attends school committee meetings and is doing the research and drilling down and looking at videos and really trying to hold people accountable. So the sick out was great because for those of us who've been banging our head against the wall for the last few years, it brought a lot of attention. All of a sudden the media showed up and people were concerned. Parents showed up. We had a full auditorium at KMS. We were talking about this. Teachers were passionate about it. They were presenting and telling their stories about how, they can't teach in this type of environment and how bad it's gotten. And I think they pulled the curtain back for a lot of us to see. So there was certainly an initial emotional reaction to that. I know that the district came out and said everything you'd expect them to say. But if you ask any of the teachers or any of the students at KMS, there's been no appreciable change. There's been keywords and buzzwords that have been thrown around. There have been ideas. There have been recommendations. There may have even been plans that have been theoretically put in place. But, if they're not, if people aren't taking action with a plan, then it doesn't matter how good the plan is. So we've kind of, and this is something that is, in my opinion, is intentional on part of the administration. People, obviously, their interest in education is going to wane in the summer months. It's when we all get to take a break from all this stuff. And the administration, I believe, counts on that. So there'll be a waning interest in this over the summer, but my goal and my hope is that we keep our foot on the gas, we get people to pay attention, and there's a consistent level of attention paid to the problems we have in this district.
What is the state, in your opinion, of the Bristol Warren School District?
So I think most importantly is academics. I mean, that's why we have schools. Our district is failing us academically. When you talk about standardized testing scores, 1/3 of our students are proficient in language arts, 1/4 proficient in math. This is unacceptable. We spend a lot of money per student, and we're not seeing it. It's almost a microcosm of Rhode Island. We talk about our roads and how it's like the punchline of Rhode Island. We pay twice as much for our roads and they're garbage. That's kind of what we get in our district. We pay a lot of money to educate our kids, but we're failing them. And it's systemic and it's widespread. It's something that, again, if we don't fix it soon, I don't know what it would take to pull things out of the fire, because it's gotten that bad. So academically, we're failing our students. There is a trend in our district because additional services or locating kids out of the district is very expensive. The district has to pay for those accommodations when the district cannot provide a safe, healthy learning environment for a particular student. Or if the student is a particular problem and they need to move them to some place where there's going to be more focus on behavioral instruction as well as the educational side of it. So the district really tries really hard to it's robbery. They're robbing people of IEPs. They're not following plans. They do creative things to get people so that they don't even know that their child is eligible. The games that are played in that space, and we're talking about the students who are the most vulnerable, the kids who need the most instruction, the most guidance, and we have a district that treats them literally like second-class citizens. It's morally reprehensible. It's a failure. Given that we treat everything else, we always teach to the middle, and we're always looking at this collective. It's the iron isn't lost on me that the people who are running the show, there's this very important group of people that we let rot in the vine. So academically, we're failing. When you talk about curriculum, we are very much college focused. We don't offer a ton as far as vocational curriculum or alternate curriculum. There have been some great programs that we've lost over the years, where there's a program right now, it's called the PASS program. Allison Lewis, who is the coordinator of that program, and so if people aren't familiar with PASS, this is a program that was put into place. Dr. Andrade, the superintendent, himself raved about this program as recently as a year and a half ago. This is a program that identifies students across the spectrum. And this could be students who are at risk for failing. It might be one class, or it might be dropping out of school altogether. But what this program does, and Allison has been very, very effective at running this program, she finds ways of reaching these kids. And very early in their high school career, because that's when kids are really at highest risk of dropping out, and she reaches these kids. And these are student athletes who they're just struggling balancing their academics with the athletics. And these are kids that maybe if they didn't have the athletics, and they wouldn't be able to have them if they weren't performing academically, they might lose interest in school. That might be their driver. So for a lot of kids, sports are maybe their ticket to getting into a decent school or a better school than they would have just based upon their academic performance. So it's not ideal, but the extracurriculars, that's part of a well-rounded student that's important. So those are the things that I feel that most importantly is where we're failing the students academically. And there's a lot we will cover. That is something that we will be doing live streams in the future. We'll be able to do a deep dive on really the numbers and what those look like, on a school-by-school basis, across demographics. Let's really start drilling down into that data and figuring out where our failings are. But even the students that graduate haven't. It's north of 50% of the students who graduate Mount Hope, our high school, they don't make it out of the second year of college. They drop out, and in part it's because we're not equipping them. There are kids who leave our district and they have to take college prep classes because they're not on par with the entry-level coursework at the college level. So we're setting kids up to fail constantly. And again, that's the academic side. There is a level of, honestly, I think the best word to use is corruption, honestly, that exists in our district. There's an incident we're going to talk about that took place at KMS that I think is it's something that, it's an event that took place that involves everyone from a teacher all the way up to school committee level. And it's a failure at every point. And some of the stuff isn't people not doing their jobs. This is people, best case scenario, being willfully ignorant. Worst case scenario, being self-serving and doing things that really has helped them or their children or their friends' children, or all the stuff that, the worst of the worst that we hear about in these types of environments as far as politics are concerned. So why don't we dive right into that?
Sure.
And
by the way, you use the term willful ignorance. I often use the term studied ignorance. To me, that means you've got folks, and I guess the old term in politics is plausible deniability.
Yep.
It's plain, these failures, these issues they're right in front of you.
Yeah.
And yet somehow, because of political expediency, folks are willing to just simply walk through them as if they simply don't exist. Is that what's happening here in Bristol Warren?
This is, unfortunately, some of this is politically driven. Some of it's, people have career aspirations, people have political aspirations. I think in the 2018 election, as far as school committees are concerned, that was a hard-fought race on the Warren side. We had two candidates diametrically opposed. One who was an incumbent, one who was someone who's very active and very Chuck Thibodeau, who's very well known and respected in town. And Chuck, out of frustration, ran like many people do, ran for office. There was a concerted effort on the part of the town Democrats, specifically the people who tend to be more progressive, to back Erin Schofield, who was Chuck's opponent, who ultimately won and is now our sitting chair. There was a lot of support for her, and it was hard fought, and here we are. So the incident that took place at KMS, and now there's some sensitive information here. I've spoken to people involved. I need people to understand that this is really, again, I'm just sharing information. There's no agenda. There's no hit list. If I can avoid using names, I will, to protect those that need to be protected. In my opinion, if you are an elected official or someone in the public sphere, and you were doing something unethical, illegal, untoward, whatever you want to say, then there should be some attention paid to that, and I'm going to be less sympathetic to people who are in that situation. So the incident that took place at KMS started on April 10th, and there was an incident in the classroom where there was a bit of a gray area as far as exactly what had happened. But there was a boy in the class who he was wearing athletic shorts, and he had kind of pulled him up, joking around. They're middle school boys, and he was standing in front of another classmate who was sitting at his desk. And as you can imagine, if you're wearing some athletic shorts and you pull them up, then it may be, you might see the outlines of certain things that, most people might not want to look at. So the kid's sitting there, kid's standing, pulls up his shorts, and so he says, yells out to the kid, forget the language, "Get your dick out of my face." So now this is heard by the classroom, and initially nothing really comes of it. But then there was all of a sudden this effort. The principal started looking into it. The police were actually called because there was there was language being thrown around where possibly somebody had exposed themselves, likely because of the phrasing that was used. But the reality of it was, to the best of my knowledge, from the people I've spoken to, there's no witness. The Warren Police Department has been involved in this, and they are pursuing nothing with this. They said there's nothing there. So I'm going based upon the information that I have. So the boys were, the police were notified because of the quote-unquote sexual nature of it. Parents weren't notified. And ultimately what happened was these boys were really railroaded. All of a sudden the district started going back and seemingly there were behavioral incidents that were never addressed with these students, and all of a sudden they appeared in a file. The parents were really baffled as to why things were being handled the way they were. It seemed like there was a real lack of communication on the part of the district, and they weren't being forthright and forthcoming about the accusations that were made, who was involved, what have you. So Warren Police become involved, they investigate, and find nothing. At this point, and this is where things start to get interesting, the district actually hired, again, this is the information I have, 3 law firms to look at this incident, look at it criminally, look at it from a school disciplinary and policy standpoint. So the district hired these law firms to really see if they could investigate this incident and determine what ultimately happened. This wasn't something that was so awful that, in my opinion, it required that level of attention. It was unprecedented. I've never been aware of the district bringing in law firms to investigate, what are ultimately 14-year-old boys. So as things progress, there appears to be some posturing on the part of the district. The boys are suspended. They are sent home. Ultimately, these boys never returned to school. They were suspended ultimately indefinitely through the end of the school year. Little explanation was given. When the parents now are starting to become concerned about the aggressive posturing of the district. Lawyers are involved. They're talking about suspensions. The boys, these are student athletes. The boys aren't playing baseball. The team's suffering. The boys aren't in school learning. The whole nine. Ultimately, what happens is the district continues to press and press. To my knowledge, they spent north of $50,000, Pat, of taxpayer money on legal fees. Again, trying to really nail these 2 boys. It was a witch hunt from go. And while this whole thing's happening, everyone keeps questioning, like, why is this happening like this? Why is this being blown out of proportion? They don't have, to the best of their knowledge, there's not a victim out there. There is someone who is the source of a complaint associated with this. But again, there was, by the police and witness testimony, there was no incident in the first place. So were people bothered, offended by the language that was used or what happened? Perhaps, and that's for their families to determine how they deal with that. Ultimately, what happened, there was this real push to go after these boys. In the end, nothing was found. The boys were never allowed to return to school. And they were, the district at that point, I think, were on their heels and started to lay out the gas a little bit, realizing that they'd probably outkicked the coverage on this and got over their heads. Now, what also happened was, anytime a student is suspended, that has to be reported to Rhode. And Rhode is the Rhode Island Department of Education. So what was interesting about this incident is these 2 boys who were suspended Rhode was actually told that the families had opted to homeschool them and not that they were suspended. This is not out of line with past behavior of our district. Anyone who's had an instance of bullying with their own child being the victim, they know firsthand that our district and our state has a very strict anti-bullying policy. And unfortunately, the district, because the district is worried about appearances to Rhode, people are worried about their personal careers, their political careers, what have you, there has been an effort to really hide as much of this information as possible. This is done through characterizing bullying instances as something other than bullying.
And by the way, if I could jump in for a second, over the past couple of years, there's a statewide level of reporting on this, and it's pretty shocking when in the year 2019 when, is it true that there's essentially nothing being reported?
I don't know for this year. I don't know what the numbers are. Every district is required to report twice a year their bullying numbers to Rhode. And I know when this came up, we were helping some families. I believe it would have been over the summer of 2017. So we looked into the numbers, and our district reported 0 instances of bullying.
That's not possible. Even in the most well-rounded, bucolic. Somebody's a bully somewhere.
Well, and ironically enough, we've not only do we have bullying, we have student-to-student bullying. We've had unreported sexual assaults. We've had situations where staff and faculty bully students. We had a situation where there was a middle school student. I'm familiar with the family, great people, and because an adult in the building who also has a child who's a student in the building spread an unfounded rumor about I believe she was in 6th grade, a 6th grade girl being pregnant. And ultimately it got tracked back to the faculty member. And they said, well, that's what I heard, and I talked to my kid about it, and then it hit the rumor mill, and this is the kind of stuff that happens in our district. And again, on the reporting side, it's problematic for 2 reasons. A, we're not looking at real statistics when it comes to bullying and discipline in our district. But the other challenge is we're also not disciplining these kids within the policy. So the district doesn't want to show Rhode that we have all these instances of bullying. So when there's bullying, they say it's something else. And they will find creative ways of doing this. If it wasn't observed by a faculty member, then it won't be documented. If they will characterize it's boys being boys, or whatever the case may be, or as a misunderstanding, it was a one-time event, it's not systemic. There's all these excuses that get made. And ultimately what happens is, because they're not following the policy, not reporting, they're not following the disciplinary side of it. So these kids, they are basically boomerangs. If you talk to a lot of teachers in the district, they are so frustrated because they have kids who disrupt. It might be one kid who will disrupt a class of 20, 25. And they send these children down to deal with the dean of disciplines, the assistant principals, and the principals, and they come right back. They're not disciplined. They're not being managed properly. And it creates a situation where it's destroying the learning environment for all the other students in the class. So that's one side of this problem. Our district uses a software platform called Aspen, and this is all encompassing. This is our children's grades, their immunizations, all their classes they take, all their records are kept in Aspen. Our district stopped using Aspen to track our disciplinary issues or instances of bullying and discipline, because there's visibility into that system through Rhode. If you don't fill out the system, then there's no visibility into the problem. So that's the kind of thing we've seen in the past. It's now gotten to the point where, again, it's systemic. I think at some schools they treat every minor infraction, they treat it like a prison. Elementary school kids aren't allowed to talk loudly at lunch. They're robbed of recess. We we take more and more of the physical releases away from our kids and their ability to get this stuff out of their system, and we practically chain the desks and hit them with Common Core and standardized testing, and the kids aren't built for this. They're not going to learn like this. So to get back to the incident at KMS, why this is so problematic is not only how this whole thing happened, and we will be able to share more in the future. This is likely going the route of litigation, so there's a lot I can't share. The last thing I want to do is jeopardize somebody's legal case against the district, certainly when it's so warranted as these are. But I believe it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, it was last Friday, Dr. Andrade was called to Rhode because complaints were filed about these two boys, and there started being more attention paid to it. So Dr. Andrade was called to Rhode, and they, much like the rest of us, they had this question: what was the impetus? What was the driver behind this? Why are you spending tens of thousands of dollars involving outside legal firms and trying, repeatedly, just not taking no for an answer and trying to find something to punish these boys for? And Dr. Andrade, under oath, testified that the individual who was pushing for this was actually Erin Schofield, who is the chair of our school committee. Why this is problematic is because I have been told that the person who filed the complaint about this was actually one of her daughters. So you have a student who their parent is the sitting chair of our school committee, who used their authority to work with the superintendent to spend over $50,000 of taxpayer money to wage a witch hunt against two 14-year-old boys who, by everyone's accounts, hadn't done anything wrong. Nothing actionable on behalf of the police department. The other part that's concerning about this is since the sick out, like we talked about, there's a lot more attention being paid to things. We have a lot more people attending our school committee meetings, and we are also familiar that which brings up an interesting point. There's a lot of, anytime you're handling personnel issues or legal matters, our school committee will go into executive session. That is very normal for bodies discussing those topics. I've never seen a body anywhere use executive session as frequently and as egregiously as our school committee does. Personally, I think it's a battle of attrition. People will show up at 7 o'clock on a Monday night for their school committee meeting. You might executive session and disappear for...
Turn off your cell phone next time.
About 2 or 3 hours. And, parents have to go home and cook dinner and put their kids to bed or do their work or whatever it is. So ultimately, they come out at 10:30 at night to a room of, a handful of people, and the opposition's gone, and it's rinse and repeat. This stuff happens all the time. We have, again, the visibility of these things. All of these meetings are recorded, and to the best of our knowledge, Erin Schofield, again the chair of the school committee, never recused herself when our school committee was talking about these legal matters, which did involve her own daughter as an accuser, or I don't even use victim because I don't think it applies. So this is a problem. The conflict of interest here is obvious. This is something that people need to be held accountable for. This is wrong. There's no justification for it. What my hope is that the school committee, there's some good people on there. I'll name names. I like Sheila Ellsworth. I think Sheila is someone, and Victor Cabral. I'd like to see more out of them. But I think these are two people who ran, who genuinely want to hold the district accountable and hold the administration accountable. The days of, our superintendent submitting a 5-page summary budget rather than the 800-page detailed budget for our school committee, those days are over. And it's because people like Victor and people like Sheila are holding these people accountable. I think they need more help. I think there are, like any other body like that, there are your different groups within it, your subsets. Those might be based upon people's own philosophy as far as education, political alignment, friends, family, what have you. It's a school committee in a small town. It's going to happen.
Let me ask you a question. School committees, school districts, by definition, are political. And political in the sense that everyone has got their own approach, they believe, to education. Some time-tested, others perhaps a little bit more extreme. But then there's the politicization of a school district in terms of how it decides to provide services to individual students, how it decides to enforce individual laws, rules, disciplines. Has the Bristol Warren School District lapsed into the latter? Are we now facing a school district that's run by the few for the few?
I believe so. And we're in such disarray right now, Pat. People in the district know this. We have searches for principals because we can't keep them. I think we have some people who are just not qualified for the job.
One of your principals was recruited, and again, I'm not mentioning names here, but was recruited from across state, from one of the highest performing elementary school districts in the state, Cumberland. And is she still with us?
She has stepped down.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that was one of those, if you step down, we won't fire you type situation, that will probably remain to be seen. But she was someone who came from, and we're talking about Cindy Giroux. Personally, I know it's just like anything else. Most people's opinion about something is going to be based upon your experience with them. So if you're not happy with the outcome of some kind of interaction with the principal or an individual, then you're going to look poorly upon them or view them in a poor light. If you got what you wanted out of it, then you might think they're the greatest people ever. So my approach with Cindy Giroux is I treat her with respect. We had some difference of opinions. We had situations that involved my kids. Fortunately, they tend to be more on the victim side. I'd rather that than them being the aggressor. I had a lot of horseshit phone calls where my kids did virtually nothing, but parents who are familiar with Hugh Cole School know that the minor infractions were dealt with an iron fist. Mm-hmm. But the major infractions it was just the opposite. They were almost not addressed and ignored. This is systemic. Like I said, I'm part of this is a difficult conversation to have because again, I have so much information. Some of it I haven't been able to have the time to vet. I need to sit down with people. I need to see documents. I need to before there are some heavy accusations here. And so I need to make sure that everything is 100% accurate before I share it. I also, again, don't want to jeopardize anybody's, if they're pursuing this legally. The last thing I want to do is put them in a bad place. But, my hope, again, is, people start paying attention. Show up to school committee meetings. You'd be amazed what you hear. We have some great parents. I'm very fortunate to work loosely with a great group of people, and these are just parents who are rolling up their sleeves and getting involved, and whether it's their kid or somebody else. And so, we had a subcommittee meeting on Monday. We had some of the parents that I'm familiar with show up, and they're paying attention now. And so when things start happening like our facilities, for example, the person who's responsible for our facilities, from what I was told, they originally reported directly to the school committee. When Dr. Andrade came on board, he then took this person under him with their budget. And so all maintenance and facility stuff goes through Dr. Andrade then. What's interesting about that was even on Monday, there was a project that they were awarding the contract, and there was only one bid respondent. I assume it was a landscaping type project in Bristol, and there was one respondent to the bid, and the number that they gave was relatively high for the work that was being done. And so people started questioning, well, why was there only one respondent to the bid? And they said, oh, well, that's just what it came back at. And all of a sudden people started digging, and, everybody has their phones in their hands. You can look up things very quickly now. And people quickly realized this actually wasn't sent out to bid. And you start looking back, and there were a variety of projects that weren't sent out to bid. And the names of the companies who were doing this work at what would be considered above market price, the same names appear. So, Pat, there's stuff, informally I'm told all kinds of stuff. And of course it's the worst of the worst. It's the seedy stuff. It's, we have a lot of cost overruns with our maintenance. And our maintenance is an absolute nightmare. We've done $1 million projects for the fields at our high school that resulted because there was poor planning and things weren't done properly. We spent millions of dollars, and all we did was we improved our fields, and we flooded about 15 houses on Naomi Street near the high school in Bristol. We've made changes at Colt Andrews where we have an active water intrusion at that school that's been present for almost 10 years. Teachers have slipped in the puddles of water that collect, and it's something that's been known, but nothing happens with it. And so why are we spending, you start looking at budgetary numbers and where is this money going? That's a big part of it. There's been some attention brought. There was a parent who asked, again, I'm going to start getting random and just stream of consciousness stuff. We all pay money to go see our kids play sporting events. So we pay all this tax money. We sacrifice, we pay our property taxes, we do all this stuff. And then if you want to see your child play basketball or football, then you're going to pay a gate fee. It used to be a recommended donation. Now it's mandatory. We have the Gestapo at the door shaking people down for their money so you can go see your kids. Now, if these funds that were collected were earmarked and actually went to athletics as they're purported to, no problem. If we see kids in the latest uniforms and we have the latest, gear and technology for our kids, fantastic. We don't. Where's the money going? And that's when, again, another situation where that topic came up with members of the school committee, and there's an account with $250,000 of gate money. How do we have an account with $250,000 just sitting there? And the number started fluctuating. It was, it's $400,000, it's $250,000. People don't know. Where's the accountability? And it doesn't happen. This is stuff that, there's money moving around left and right. We've had, when everything happened at KMS and the superintendent was talking about additional emotional supports, he pulled, what I was told, was about $600,000 out of COSI, which is an after-school program. There's a COSI account. We're taking out bonds to buy things and then using money recklessly, and there's, like I said, a total lack of accountability. I think there needs to be a forensic audit of our district. I think when people start pulling back the layers, they're going to start seeing a level of organized corruption that has been going on for years. Much like you said, it's people taking care of their own. It's people in our district. When you're active in education, you're going to see these things. This is so incestuous, and this is political. When you talk about, people and again, I'm not trying to pick on Erin. And let me just, for a second, because I know how this is going to go. I do not have a personal issue with Erin Schofield. I don't have a personal issue with any of the people I've mentioned. This is, again, a matter of people are sitting in positions. Erin fought very hard for that seat. We expect her to do a job when she's there. And you're not beyond reproach. I'm a transparency guy. I want to know everything that's going on. Everything should be full disclosure. I want full disclosure from our school committee. What I also want to see is I want to see all these people grow a pair. Informally we have communication with these people. For me, this all boils down to, and if this is the private sector, ultimately who's responsible for this? And the CEO of our school district is Dr. Mario Andrade as their superintendent. This is stuff that's systemic, Pat. It's been going on for years. It's getting worse. And it's affecting our ability to teach our students. It's affecting our ability to keep them safe. Our teachers aren't safe. Our teachers hate going to school. How are we supposed to attract top teaching talent if our schools are a goddamn nightmare? How are we supposed to? We have our teacher of the year, all right? Allison Lewis, the one I was talking about with this past program. This is something that we are taking kids. This helps our graduation rate. We are taking kids who are at risk of failing, and we're taking them and giving them the tools necessary to graduate. We had a petition for Allison to keep her job. The comments, if you read that petition, students were coming saying, I would not have graduated. I would not have a professional career. I would not have been anything if it wasn't for the care and concern that Allison Lewis showed me, the individual attention that she gave me that showed me that I mattered, and that school mattered, and I could be something. And this is how she's touching people. But because, we got to make cuts, and because of politics and the way things work, there's a high probability we're going to lose our district teacher of the year. This stuff shouldn't happen. And we're certainly not going to be able to get, replacement, top-notch replacement talent as far as teachers are concerned. So, again, this all boils down ultimately to, I think in order to fix this district, a lot of things have to happen, pillar to post. I think ultimately that starts with moving on from Dr. Mario Andrade as our superintendent. For those of you who follow me, I also participate in a group of parents who we run the Bristol Warren Regional School District Parent, Student and Family Advocacy page. I'll share a link for it underneath the live stream. This is just a group of parents who we try and share as much information as possible. Some of it's done at the district level as far as specific instances. Some of this stuff is going to be, general education, standardized testing, Common Core, philosophy as far as education is concerned, what's happening at the state level. So we try and cover as much as possible. It's all done as a volunteer basis. If people want to reach out, they're welcome to, if you want to participate. But we will be sharing a petition asking for our school committee to release Mario Andrade. One of the things about this is, like I said, the school committee, some of these people have reached out to us informally and said, we have the majority who is willing to dismiss Dr. Andrade, but for political reasons, they need the families and parents to have a petition so that they then can basically pass the buck and say it's the parents and the families and the taxpayers who want Andrade gone. These people are very aware of the state of things. This is something, again, it's systemic, it's widespread. We're failing our students on a colossal level, and it needs to change, and I think that's where it starts. So,
folks, if you're hearing there's some type of alarm going off in the building, we're not sure if that is by one person, one wag suggestion that in fact the superintendent of the Bristol Warren School District is surrounding the building right now, hence the undisclosed location. It's such a bleak picture in this state, and it's so easy educationally, and it's so easy for people who run education, who run government, to dismiss us as what did the one leader say at one point? Nattering nabobs of negativity. I think that was the technical term. But this is very real. And the problem, and I had the opportunity to appear on the Lively Experiment about a month or so ago, and I talked about the educational holocaust that's going on in the state. Yeah. And I got a little bit of flack because there are people who took a little bit of offense at that word, but I meant it intentionally because we are losing entire generations who are incapable of competing in the larger world. My children are older. My youngest just graduated from college, a prestigious school, and it became clear to me in going through the college application process that our children here in Rhode Island, there you go, are no longer competing with children from Boston, children from Harvard, for the prestigious seats at major universities. They're competing with a global student population. Our children are no longer, the children who choose to go into the trades, which, I commend to anyone's attention. They are no longer competing with, people who are local. They're competing with literally folks from around the country, around the world, in developing that technology and the base knowledge necessary to adapt to a trade world that's no longer turning a wrench, as if it ever was, but clearly requires a sophisticated set of math skills and critical thinking skills. So regardless of whether you're planning to go to college or whether you plan to go pursue a career in one of the vocational trades, the educational demands have never, ever been more dramatic. Ever. And so, as a result, folks have to step it up in the state. It is no longer acceptable, is it, to constantly project we've got an 8 or 10 year plan, because left behind during that entire process are the children who are being allegedly educated, someone would say warehoused, right now. So, it's there has to be a sense of urgency, and it can't be just driven by folks upset about sports budgets being cut.
No. And I get it. Anger is certainly the emotion that drives people. But I've always viewed anger as highly combustible. It tends to flash. So it burns real hot for a very short period of time, and then it kind of dissipates and goes away. So while we're willing, anyone who wants to come out and be a part of this, you don't have to be a part of the group. There's no initiation like that. This is very loose. It's very informal. We understand everybody leads busy lives. Give what you can, and reach out, even if it's just a matter of, you don't even have to do heavy lifting. Reach out and just ask what's going on. I know people don't have time to help, and we have our families and our jobs and all that stuff, and that's number one. I get it, but this has gotten to the point where if we don't do something now, good luck having your kids get into a decent school. Coming from this district is going to be a scarlet letter. My plea to people who are following tonight is teachers, work with the families. We got to start working together. I know that, and it sucks. It's cultural. When I grew up, if I got in trouble in school, my parents were standing right there with the superintendent or the principal, whoever it was, the teacher, and they were both disciplining me. Today it's different. Parents are standing up for their kids. The teachers are the enemy. So when kids get in trouble, the parents are in there hammering the teacher on it, even when their kids are blatantly wrong. I get it. We need to start fixing that kind of stuff. Again, it's cultural. This isn't going to be a light switch. It's going to take some time. But it's going to come with a consistent, concerted effort to fix things. And if people give what they can when they can, and we have a decent base of people who can be the watchdogs and pay attention to stuff and know where to look and how to do these things, I think we can turn things around. I don't think it's going to happen with Dr. Andrade as our superintendent. I think that's the first foot that has to drop is moving on from Dr. Andrade. I wish him the best of luck wherever he goes. It's got to be someplace called elsewhere.
Is there a mechanism in place to make that happen, or does that have to be driven by the parents in the district? The
committee could actually do it right now. From what we're told, they have the votes 5-4. But again, for political expediency and the people's own professional / political goals. They don't want to be. I get it. Trust me. I'm one of those people. I'm an advocate for people. It puts a bullseye on me. I hear stories about things that I've done and things that I've said, horrible things that aren't true, but I get it. I've been politically active. I don't really care what other people think about me other than the people who I care about. So people who know me well or at all know that I'm genuine in my intention. I'm all about kids. I've had a variety of things happen in my life that it's a hyper focus for me, and that's not going to change. Where that leads me, who knows? Maybe I don't run for district rep against Knight next time. Maybe Daryl runs for school committee. And if I do, it's to be a voice of opposition, to be the watchdog, to be the guy who's shining a flashlight in the dark corners and trying to get things fixed. We need more people like that. So anyone out there who's interested in running for school committee, if that's an aspiration or even if you're open to it, reach out to me. You can talk to me. I'll put you in touch with people who are sitting members of the school committee. They can talk about the obligations they have, what the workload is, give you the kind of real world picture of that. If you want to be involved as an advocate, great. If you just want to support when you can, reach out. There'll be all kinds of ways. Everyone can always reach out to me. My phone number is 401-829-6872. Call me, text me. If I don't have an answer, I'll find it for you. I'll point you in the right direction. Again, we have some other great people who are part of the team. I'm not going to start naming names because I know I'll leave people out, and I think everybody's really important. So the people who are involved in this group, you guys know who you are. And thank you for your efforts. Certainly none of us could do it alone, and I think we need more people. But given the resources we have right now, I think we're kicking ass, and I think things will change. So that's where we're at.
So the optimist in you shines through at the last moment.
I'm hoping. Well, because that's what else do we have, Pat? It's this, and I know parents out there who their kid. It's awful. I know parents who've been blackballed. They're teachers who, because they're afraid of a parent, because they're vocal in their advocacy for their student, that this kid is a hot potato. Teachers don't want to deal with the parent. I have parents who go in for parent-teacher conferences, and the teachers are showing up with their legal representation from the union because they have no backing from the district. We're a mess. Nobody's held accountable on any level, including the students. And I know, and we saw it with the sick out, and I'm just going to say this right now, there's enough blame to go around everywhere. Is this all Dr. Mario Andrade's fault? No. Is he, ultimately culpable for this? Is he responsible for it? Yes. Does he need to go? Yes. Is the school committee responsible for this? Yes, in part. I think they're failing us at times. We shouldn't see these 9-1, 8-2 votes. Where's the opposition? Where's the critical dialogue where people are challenging each other? Or are we all just going along to get along? Parents, this isn't something where, every time this comes up with discipline, it's parents need to be harder on their kids, give them a good whack and all that stuff. That isn't the solution to the problem. A lot of times this is, if you understand human behavior and child behavior and development, you can have good kids that, when they're exposed to an undisciplined kid who gets away with it, they become somewhat of a cult figure, of a hero. They're standing up to the authority figures, the school, the administration, what have you. They mouth off. It's funny. That gets kids to support them loosely. These might be really good kids that otherwise would be very well behaved, but this is human nature. So this isn't a situation where the parents aren't disciplining the kids enough. Is this happening? Yeah. But it's teachers, it's parents, it's the administration, it's the students themselves. Everybody is responsible, and we all need to do our part to fix this. So, I'll manage my kids. I do my thing. I'll do whatever I can to help anyone I can, as long as I have bandwidth to do it. And if I don't, I'll point in the right direction. We have some unbelievable people who are really selfless, who dedicate a ton of time. Retired people who have basically treated it like a full-time job. trying to advocate and help other students, going and fighting for their IEPs, their 504s, making sure the kids are getting what they need. That's, we all have to work together to fix this. So forgive me for the kumbaya horse shit, for lack of a better term, but we all need to step up and do this. The days where we can just send our kids off to school and come back and they're all going to be well-rounded students and do it, those days are gone. In our district, you need to be active, you need to be involved. It doesn't have to be a full-time job for you, but if we're not looking and paying attention, that's when people are pulling this crap that we're stuck in now. And it's gotten to the point where they got away with it for so long that now this is just the culture. This is the way our district is run. So congratulations, Bristol Warren Regional School District. We are a microcosm of Rhode Island where corruption reigns supreme. It's I know a guy and my friend's going to get the, their children are going to get the best of services, whatever they want. And if you don't know somebody or if you're not in a position of influence, then you're going to be at the bottom of the heap with everybody else.
Well said. Daryl Gould, activist, community leader, someone who's more than just a passing familiarity with the school system, someone who's has invested his livelihood, his home, and his family right here in this community, in this school district. He is the epitome of what we call in the coalition, someone who takes it very, very personally. We're going to call it an evening. This should be up on Facebook in perpetuity. If you're listening for the first time, the coalition typically broadcasts Friday evening from 6 to 9. We are outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media. We will brook none of the silliness and foolishness that seems to be steeped in our local media these days. We handle what we call third rail issues: educational reform, politics, the war on drugs. This Friday, for example, at 6 o'clock, in fact, last week we had Senator Lincoln Chafee on. That show will be up shortly. This Friday, we're going to have a group called FIRE, who is a nationwide organization supporting free speech on campus. We're going to have expert witness testimony discussing the decriminalization of sex work. And then in the 8 to 9 o'clock hour, we are going to have an expert come out and talk about Venezuela. Not the usual tripe that you hear in the media, not the usual shocking pictures, but a real analysis of just exactly how Venezuela got to this tortured place and time. If you have a moment, if you could like us or follow us on social media, we'd be grateful.
And share this video. Listen, share this to your friends. Share it on your timeline. And people comment on it. Don't just be like, nice video. Share an opinion on it. This is what's going to get it up in the newsfeed for people so it'll get out there. This is something, the first thing you can do right now is hit the share button underneath this video, get it out to your friends and family, and let them know what's going on.
Excellent. Couldn't have said it better myself. So we're going to sign off. Again, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting for once in the bunker in Warren. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.